Well, this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. We are on the third day of the week of Parshas Vayigash. We're standing here on page Shin Lamed Tes. I'm going to take a look at a pasuk that Rebbe Yitzchak is bringing over here. I'm going to read it first in what I understand the Hebrew, and then we're going to read the art scroll, what the art scroll says about this portion. So it's a pasuk of Rebbe Yitzchak. Rebbe Yitzchak began and said like this: Kamigdal David Savarech, that your neck is like the tower of King David, Benoi in its beauty, and its beauty is compared to Talpios Elef Hamogin. So it's like the Talpios. And then there are which is one, sounds like one of the 1,000 shields, Taloi Olav, that is hanging down from its neck. Kol Shalti Giburim, this is always the power of the mighty man. Now, let me just read this in English so we can get an idea of what the art scroll thinks that this is. It's pasuk number 4 at the very top. And he says, as stately as the Tower of David is the site of your Sanhedrin, built as a model to emulate with 1,000 shields of Torah armor hung upon it. So he says, the art scroll says that this is talking about the Sanhedrin. That's not what the Zohar is going to say. The Zohar says, let's go, we read the pasuk, and now let's go, Kamigdal David, when it says it is like the Tower of David. Shoel ma Migdal David, what is, in fact, the Migdal David? Mahu Migdal David, what is this a reference to below Kaf Adimion? It's not, so it says, if you just want to know, it says like the Tower of King David. But what, on the other hand, if you just looked at it, to answer the question, what is the Migdal of King David? So he said, do Migdal David, Vade, the Bandal Le David. He said, also David HaMelech. David HaMelech built a tower. We know that, the Tower of David. But now he says, what it really means is the Holy Temple. Shenikra Migdal David, which is called the Tower of David, Al Shem Shuhu Heikin called Sarki Benihis Habayis, because he prepared all the foundations and everything that was needed. You have to gather a tremendous amount of material, etc., etc., etc. It's as if he himself built it. It was actually built and finished by his son. As Yerushalayim. So in the middle of the Yerushalayim, he built this huge structure of the Beis Hamikdash. Ella, but really it says Kamigdal David. It's like the Migdal of David. It's not the Migdal of David, it's like it. Ella Masha Amachakasa Kamigdal Bekov Adimion, and it says Kaf means like. Dor Yerushalayim de La'ela. Here is talking about what he did. He's built the Yerushalayim above Zohar Malchus. This is Malchus Anikra Yerushalayim Shal Ma'ala, which is called the Upper Yerushalayim. Shehi Midaso Shel David, which is, of course, Malchus is the Midah of David HaMelech. Dechsiv Bey, because it's written in regard to King David. Migdal Oz Shem Havaya, Pirush. Shem Havaya Shu HaMalchus, the Shem Havaya, which is manifest in Malchus. Now, Havaya normally means Zeranpin. So here we see why, because you see it in Malchus. He says that the Shem Havaya Shu HaMalchus, he Migdal Oz. It's a powerful, powerful tower. So back to the concept of the tower again. Bo Yarut Sadik Bo. Misyachad Yisod Zer Anpen. And this is what he said, Bo Yarutz Tzadik. So he said, what's Tzadik? So once I say Tzadik is another word, and we see these words used over and over consistently, is another word for Yisod, Zer Anpen. So he said Tzadik. Bo Misyached HaYisod Zer Anpen. So in her this Malchus. Achieves a Yichud with Zer Anpen and Nikra Tzadik, who's called Tzadik. Tzadik Baratzon. And he says that what does Ratzon mean? He means to say Tzadik in that he's accepted. He's perfect. The Nizgav, and also elevated. Man Nizgav, so who's the one that's elevated? Al Maso Veves Milas Nizgav. What is this talking about? Im Soved Al Hamigdal or Al Tzadik. If it's talking about it, it's elevated. Does it mean the Migdal? Does it mean that is the Migdal, which is Malchus, or does he mean the Tzadik, which is Yesod? Elohahu Migdal Nizgav. Ela malchus hi nizka, but it's the malchus which is elevated. Begin debe yarud tzaddik, because this is the place that the tzaddik wants to be accepted. That is, the sod wants to enter into the malchus. So what's it mean around your neck? Do beis mikdash of the sata. That's talking about the earthly base of mikdash. Now he just said, I'm not sure what he just, that I really understood what he said. He was talking about the base of mikdash shalamala. And he says, and it is very elevated. And what's the elevation? The elevation is Malchus making it possible for Zer Anpin, that's the mikdash of above, to make a yichud with her. Down below here, though, Zecher ne'ember b'beis mikdash amata, v'lechein nikra tzalvar. So therefore, it's called a neck. Dihu koyim b'tikundacha the shviracha the kadlacha the gufa. So this interesting idea that he says. He said because the neck, the neck omed b'tikun noah v'yafa kamo hatzavar laguf. He said because this, what we're talking about here, this what was the word? The fishuhu omed, that is that this base of mikdash down below stands like the neck, the beauty of the neck, which is the most beautiful part of the body. So we try to understand what is the neck. Well, if you think about it for a minute, the neck is the connection between the body and the head. Just like the neck is the most beautiful part of the body. So therefore the base of Mikdash is the most beautiful place in the whole world. But the talpios. Now we have this word talpios, we have to do something about it. It's in a beautiful state of talpios. Pirusho. Tila dekol b'bnei alma hava mistaklim be. So a tila is like a pile or a heap. It's a tail. So who tail? So if you're in Israel, you see these mounds, these huge mounds that had civilizations, one after the other, piled on top of them. So it's like a pile. Who tail umakom gavoa, a very high place. Shekol b'necham olam choy mistaklim, that everybody would look at it. Lehispalach of the shavcham sham l'chakodesh baruch hu, to go to those places to pray and to bring praises to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So this is how we're going to explain this. He says, let me see if I got room on this page to get it in there. Here it is. And this is how we explain it. Talpios. What does talpios mean? Who osius tail pios. So tail, I could say, my first thought about it was it's a gematria of 430, and pios is the word mouth. So now he says, let me tell you what the translation is. Tail to call pios the alma. So it is the heap or the pile of all of the mouths of the world. Meshavchan mitzalachim legabe. So he said that's where the prayers go. That's where all that comes from. Tail shakol pios ha'olam meshavchim. It's this mound, this huge mound that all of the worlds are meshavim mispalim darcho la kodesh baruch hu. They use this as a means to be able to pray to Hashem. Then it says, Elef amalgam taliolov, and there are 1,000 shields that hang from it. Pirusho ilan elef tikunim, the misaktim beka the koyos. So what are these shields that we're talking about? And this, here we see the theme, the repeated theme of the Zohar many, many times. Ze'elo elef tikunim shemisaktim bo karoi. Because what the real work of the Jew here is in this world is to effect the tikkun in the upper worlds, which is to pray to such extent that the flow will start to coming back down to us. So he said, Ritzon Lomar, he says, Eser Spheros Shal HaMalchus. Malchus has 10 Spheros. Shukal Achas Kalula Me'eser. Each one of those has 10, that's 100. Ve'eser Me'eser, and then 10 of those 10s, Shehem Elef, which comes about 10 times 100, which is 1,000. So bebechinas shemisaktim bo al yedecha v'avodas karbanos bebeis mikdash, and these are the 1,000 different tikkunim that are brought to bear. Remember, tikkunim once again is a way of channeling the flow in a clean, unpure way. Is it unpure? I said clean and pure way. That's the right way to say that. Clean, perfect way. Not easy to do because everything is broken, and that's what we're doing over here. So he said, through the kabbanos that has 1,000 different effects. Kol shalti ha-giburim, l'chein heim nekroim giburim. So therefore, these are all called the powerful men. The kulhu called asin mesitra the dinikashi. The vishakulim boim mitzad din kosher, because all of them come from the side of the left, hard left side, which is the side of din. Ratzon Alomer wants to say like this: Sheikar tikkun malchus hu ayadecha gevuros, that the main tikkun for malchus is through the gevuros. Shal yadam him is kashetis. Now, this is a basic thought that he wants to say that malchus is made out of gevuros. We see this in other places, so therefore she's loaded with din. Vo dimyun beis hamikdash litzavar. So now here we see, here's another comparison of the beis hamikdash to a neck. And the Zohar says, Ma'at Savar, call Tikunin to eat this Bebe Italian. So he says like this, let's talk about the neck. Kamosha Savar, call Tikuni Vikashuta Haisha Battalion. A woman puts necklaces and all different kinds of things around that neck in order to adorn it. Kach Mikdasha, also the base of Mikdash. Call Tikuni de Alma Beitalian Visharian. So he says also the base of Mikdash, all of its tikkunim, everything that needs to be, make the channels go up and go down the way they should. The Hainach Sheyi has Shefa, Tov, Ba'ol, and they should bring down a tremendous amount of very good Shefa into the world. Tuluyim, V'Shruyim, Bo, are all dependent, living by this channel, the neck, base of Mikdash. And we've explained this. So he says that they ran after our necks. So he says, so what are they running after? They're still running after the same thing. They're running after the base of Mikdash. Which is the neck. It is the beauty of the entire world because it's able to connect the lower world with the upper world. So we know so we had to build it twice. But then after that, it wasn't allowed. Hashem Yisbarach has not allowed us to rebuild the base of Mikdash. It was destroyed. It has never been rebuilt again. So if a person's neck gets sick, so he says once it's cut off, called gufa his whole body becomes destroyed from it. The same thing, Beg Mikdasha, the holy temple, since it's destroyed and now it's dark. The whole world is living in darkness. And the sun is not shining. And they're also not streaming out their powers. So here we come a begin. Yosef al. So this is the reason why Yosef Asadik cried on the shoulders. Yosef al Harbanos, yeah. That we have, the Medrash, of course, says that when he cried on the shoulders of Benyamin, it was about the base of Mikdash, which was in his domain. The Holy of Holies is in the domain of Benyamin, and how it had to be that this was going to be destroyed, and he saw it, and so forth. That's the reason why he cried. Then after he cried about the destruction of the base of Mikdash, he also cried on the shoulders of the brothers and the tribes, because they would be sent into Galus. When the base of Mikdash was destroyed, all of the Shavatim, they were immediately put into Galus, and scattered throughout all of the Gentiles. This is the meaning of this phrase. So he said that he kissed all of his brothers, and he cried over them. On them, that's certainly, for sure. Al kulam bacha, he cried on each one of them. So al base of Mikdash, he means on the base of Mikdash, this charav the transimnim of the fact that it was destroyed 2 different times. Val achui aseres hashvatim, and his brothers who make the 10 tribes. This galo begalusa, the isbadrum ben Yamamaya. Remember, the 10 tribes were sent out. Val achiv aseres hashvatim of the northern kingdom, that were sent into exile and scattered throughout the people, about the nations. And then also after that, though, his brothers came and they spoke with him. And it doesn't say over there that they cried. The reason why Yosef Avinu was crying, that was sparked out of him, a ruach hakodesh. In other words, it was a stimulation that came from within, v'rob as atzaros, and he was able to see from that little bit of spark of inspiration the pain that was going to become to his brothers, sheyimsa as Yisrael, that the Jewish people will find themselves in. But the last line is that he cried on them, but it doesn't say they cried on him. Heim lo bachol, they didn't cry. Ki lo shar shalalechem ruach hakodesh, because the ruach hakodesh was not resting on them. V'lo v'rochav as kol hatzaros, and they were not able to see the future. They were not able to see all the pain she'am rochav Yisrael would pass over the Jewish people, and that we would have to pass through. This is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. This is the 3rd day of the week of Parshas Vayigash. Thank you, Oma, so much.